The weather's nice, and that means festivals, concerts, and other large gatherings. But it super sucks when that awesome picture won't upload to Instagram or there's not a good enough connection when you've lost all your friends, right? How can we make sense of internet connectivity and network availability? We're getting into the technical stuff today. That's why I have my guest this week, Payman Samadi. He is the CEO at eino, an AI-powered connectivity planning platform that helps plan new networks or test and expand existing ones. Yes, please. I cannot wait for this conversation. But first, welcome to this week's episode of Make Sense, a video podcast that simplifies complex issues at the intersection of tech and people. So whether you're totally hyped on artificial intelligence, you're ready for the robot takeover, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, I'm here with my guests to help make sense of what's going on so you can design yourself into the future and make better choices. My name is Lindsay. I'm a product market fit strategist, innovation consultant, and venture fundraising advisor. If you're new here, smash that YouTube button, the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So let's make sense of internet connectivity and network availability. Payman, it's been 6 months probably since we last spoke. How are you?
Hi, Lindsay. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. I'm having so much fun making
Hmm.
these Make Sense episodes. We've recorded over 20 so far this year.
Oh,
So just chugging along. You're 8 months out from completing Techstars, and that's where we got to know each other. So, what are your thoughts on the experience now that there's been some time since the program ended?
I mean, when we joined Techstars program, we had specific goals, and one was we were trying to enter a new market and come up with a new product, and one was on fundraising. And Techstars really helped us on both fronts. I would say 8 months after that, we were able to close around and also release our new product attraction. So it was a great experience. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so glad you were able to close around. It's been really, really rocky out there for a
Mhm.
lot of startup founders, but that just goes to show that the problem you are solving is significant, and I can't wait to talk
Mhm.
more about that. Let's do our warm up session. For those of you that have been listening to Make Sense, you know that I start with our first segment, Crystal Ball. What does the
Mhm.
future hold? This is where I call out interesting predictions made by other experts. They made it for this year, 2023, and the experts, my guests, tell us their hot take. So I'm going to pitch a prediction, and Payman, I want you to say either, yes, I want that to happen, or that is happening, or no, I don't want that to happen, or no, that's not happening anytime soon. It's just going to take a lot longer. So, since many of these headlines are new to Make Sense, we'll take a little longer on each to talk through them, okay? All right, you ready?
Yeah.
And just for the audience to know, Payman does not know what these trends are. None of my guests do. He asked that maybe I would send them to him, but I would not. So this is the fun part, and why you also want to watch it on YouTube so you can see our facial reactions. So, Payman, really hot topic on Make Sense, because I just want to see where you stand. Artificial intelligence will not replace you, but a person using it will.
I would say I'd like to see that happen because this is not something very new. I know you want short answer, but it's a very interesting topic because when we had the Industrial Revolution, humans still working, but instead of working with their hands, they start working with machines. When we have digital revolution, people start working with computers rather than working with, hardware. And the same thing is with AI. We're going to have people who use AI to do stuff rather than coding. So I'm sure it will happen, and it would be great
Yeah.
for all of us.
Yeah. How does eino leverage AI on your platform?
We use it in different places. So our platform creates digital twins for networks. So first concept, we have a building, an infrastructure that you want to build a network for it. We receive the layout and we use image processing, image recognition. That's the first set of AI that we use. And then we have clustering algorithm that says for this infrastructure, for the type of use case that we have, what would be the type of network and how many access points and where you need to put it. And that's where we use optimization and clustering to find the best and most optimal solution.
So if I can dumb it down, let's all imagine we are looking at a layout of a building. We have an idea where there are existing networks, and the AI is going to look at that too and help us identify like places where we would want to add new kind of sensors or access points to increase or better the network performance.
That's in the existing solution case, but if you have a new building, the AI will look at the building and tells you, oh, here you have, let's say you have a warehouse, here you have your devices, here you have your sensors, here you have your IoT, here you might have a self-driving lift truck.
Yeah.
So how I need to design this network.
Okay, so, and then do you or whoever is using your platform, the AI makes all the suggestions, but is there still a person that it accepts those suggestions, says, yes, use their human brain to approve what the robot, the AI is approving, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
want to, we want that the person who's an expert use their time on things that really matters rather than things that are very, needs a labor. So we automate a lot of process and then we ask the user yes or no. And then they say yes, we move to the next step.
Yeah, so we still need that person in between to kind of sign off on whatever the AI is suggesting. Okay, cool. Artificial intelligence won't necessarily replace all of us right away, but people using it will likely replace others that are not. So it's stupid to not just jump in, but use your brain. So, next prediction. There will be a race for handset manufacturers to provide their own satellite connectivity. So what I understand is rather than us relying on the like Comcast, Verizon, Cox, Spectrum, etc. for Wi-Fi, our phones and tablets like Samsung and Apple will come with direct connectivity via satellites. And this will really help us solve for particularly, underserved areas, those dead spots, rural areas, remote areas. Is that real?
Yes, and it will going to happen. But one thing to have in mind is at the end of the day, the satellite is also a network. So someone like Verizon or Cox will manage that network. So Verizon might tomorrow start building a network of satellites to compete with Starlink, and that will happen. But the reality is that cellular connectivity that we have on our phones at the moment with 5G could answer a lot of questions and has more capacity and performance than that even needed with the current applications. So I think that the next step that makes more sense is that our laptops have a SIM card or like a virtual SIM card. So we don't need to connect to Wi-Fi anywhere we go. We're just connected to internet, and it has better performance, it has better reliability, it has better security, and especially for enterprise users, then their user can use cellular network, their own network anywhere.
So, what you're suggesting is, for instance, I have an unlimited data plan, so many times wherever I go, I just use my phone as the hotspot for my computer instead of connecting to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi. And you're saying, hey, let's just skip a step. Instead of making the laptop connect to the phone, why don't we just have a SIM card that goes straight into the laptop, similar to how you can get a SIM card in your iPad or your tablet so that it can
Exactly.
connect directly to data as well. That's what you're saying?
Yes, but
Cool.
then there's one thing that becomes enabled there that is a bit different. Now we are all connecting to this public network
Uh-huh.
that we all are part of it. But then enterprises could make their own cellular network in different slices. So when Comcast hires a new person and gives them a laptop, they could connect to the Comcast network anywhere they are on that slice that they are, and makes it much easier for everyone.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah. So it could be public, connect to your existing AT&T unlimited data, or it could be enterprise if, a very large company wants to manage the amount of their, network that's being used, and they can make it private and put it across an area. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Okay. So next trend. Similarly, 5G will close the digital divide. So, regions around the country and world are still left behind due to a lack of reliable internet access. About 6% of the population in the US still lacks access to sufficient speeds. This prediction says the rollout of 5G will pave the way for a new generation of internet accessibility, particularly in rural areas. Is there a reason for hope there?
I don't think they're very related. I think what will
They're not
fill
related.
the not
No,
much. I feel like
5G and the like remote areas not necessarily related.
no, no. I think
Interesting.
what will really fill the gap is fiber. The more we have fiber, or the more we have satellite connectivity, that's where we could really feel the digital gap that exists in the country.
Got it. Okay. So 5G in itself, not the thing, but the fiber cables, right? The connections and more satellite connectivity. Okay. So going back to um, yeah, leveraging the satellite network. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see the digital divide close in all
Mhm.
aspects, but we'll see what it really is at the end of the day that helps people in rural areas. Random fact, and I'm going on an aside, Payman, is that did you know that the Nokia, which I believe is Danish, it was a Danish company,
Finish.
Finnish company, they invented, like, they were part of kind of the leader in mobile phones
Mhm.
because they guarantee phone connection to their all of their inhabitants in their country. So in the 90s, when they're trying to, they could decide, are we going to roll out phone cables all the way to these remote areas, or are we going to invent mobile phones so that
Mhm.
they have that access? So that's a random fact about the history
That's
of,
very interesting.
the improvement of mobile phones.
No,
Unfortunately, we
no.
don't have that same commitment in the US. So if you live out in the middle of nowhere, it's up to you to figure it out right now.
I mean, actually, talking about that, I read in the news the other day that the governments just signed this big budget, I think 30 billion, if I'm not wrong, uh, to provide connectivity all across the United States. I think this is a new initiative that recently just happened.
Okay, so cool. There's some
Yeah.
optimism. We'll have to research that and bring it back up in a future
Mhm.
Make Sense episode. All right, last prediction. Smart homes will become more innovative, but so will attempts to exploit them. So, 1/3 of US consumers have smart gadgets at home, Ring or Alexa, Echo, but these devices are not the paragon of security. So, are you seeing a
Mhm.
growing call for these network based approaches to security?
Yes, I think they will grow, but the attacks will also grow. And that's actually a very interesting topic because Wi-Fi does not have the best security, and that's what we usually use. But cellular networks have a lot of security. So there is an argument that maybe gradually things go more towards cellular networks, so we have
Mhm.
more security, more control. It's more expensive, and both on the device side and the network side. But I think that's inevitable, and it will happen the same way that we are. Everything's more digital these days compared to 10 years ago.
That's so fascinating. Okay, so cellular networks are more secure than Wi-Fi networks, which then, to circle back to what you said about our laptops having SIM cards and just directly connecting to cellular networks instead of going through Wi-Fi, from a security point of view, that sounds like a really great idea.
Certainly, yeah, because that network, that cellular is managed by someone like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and it's very secure, but the Wi-Fi is managed by you at home, so
Hmm.
it is not as secure. So it's much easier to enter any sort of
Yeah.
Wi-Fi network compared
So
to cellular.
here's a question. Do
Mhm.
you have any smart IoT devices in your home?
Uh, no, I don't. And the reason is that I don't have that many devices at my home anyway. So I live
Okay.
with like some, kind of minimalist. And yeah, that's the main reason. And that's
So
that's it.
I too am smart home deviceless free as well.
Yeah.
And that's actually been a conscientious choice because I understand that security on the edge computing, this idea of like all of these little Ring and Echo and Amazon, they're on the edge of your network and the data on your Wi-Fi, not really secure, as Payman just said. You're responsible for managing the security of that. So most of us don't even know that's our responsibility, let alone know what we can do to do better. And so I, yes, have consciously, besides an actual security system on my house, I do not have smart IoT devices because of the background listening and because of the potential security threat if someone wants to get super innovative and hack into my home. I don't know what they want to find, but
But also, I mean, those are definitely one side that's very important. But on the other side, the concept of digitalization of the world, we spend a lot of time in front of digital devices every day. And having the opportunity not to be close to digital devices, it's very good for us to get less engaged and have that kind of noise that is on our neural system kind of
I
slow
really
down.
appreciate that. I really appreciate that because I saw some, you know, I I hate calling these memes because it's just a screenshot of someone's Twitter post, but it's not really a meme, but someone wrote, um, I get to look at my small phone while paying a small screen while paying attention to my big screen, aka TV, as a reward for looking at my medium screen all day, which is your computer.
The laptop, yeah. It is
So,
very true, and it's very it's really changing our attention span. If you see how the generation after us that they grew up with like iPads since they were 6 years old, now they have much less patience towards getting
right,
the information compared to our generation and then the one before us that they could sit and read a newspaper for 3 hours. I don't think
right.
anyone could sit and read a newspaper for 3 hours anymore.
Yeah. Well, I do remember, to be fair, in the 90s when I had to do a current events homework assignment, I would always look for the absolute smallest article in the newspaper
Yeah.
to clip out and summarize. So
Yeah.
my attention span wasn't that much
Yeah.
better than everyone now.
Yeah.
All right. So that wraps up Crystal Ball. For our
Mhm.
second segment, let's take a deep dive into the intersection of connectivity and kind of the future of work. So, another prediction I came across was that by 2026, 40% of enterprises are going to double their investments in hyper-connected digital spaces to increase productivity, improve collaboration, boost energy efficiency. So, I imagine is going to play a role in that because you help create private networks. Uh, let's break this down for our audience. Can you help me define hyper-connected digital space? Is that just what it means? Is a space with a ton of networking and connectivity power?
I think that term specifically, there are different ways to describe it, but on one side you have the network underneath that provides the infrastructure, but usually when they talk about this hyperconnectivity, they also talk about one layer above, which is the application. And we talk about the application, what are the different ways that people could be connected together all the time? So, for example, now we have video calls that makes people very connected in one level of face to face. We have Slack that they could chat to each other. Now we have all these VR and that you could feel that you're in a 3D space together. And then you have the metaverse that as if you're really there. So I think that's something that some people are advocating for it. I personally think at some point there will be a balance between the digital connection and in-person connection, because it's very hard for us as a human being that for thousands of years we were in touch with each other in real physical life,
Yeah.
suddenly in a period of 5 years be fully digital.
Right.
And yeah, that's definitely something that find its right balance in the near future.
Okay. Why do enterprises need these spaces? And why
Yeah,
does an enterprise need their own private network?
yeah. So if you think about it, 5 years ago versus 10 years ago versus 15 years ago, let's say when you were entering an office space, even pre-COVID, like 2019, there was a Wi-Fi connection around that people were using it here and there. And they had it on their phone, they had it on their laptop, and they were using it for casual uses. There were some calls happening here and there, but going forward now, when you enter, everyone is on a Zoom call or a Teams call all the time. So it's very important that it has to work all the time. So it
Right.
has become much more complex problem compared to 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. That's on one side. And then the other side, you have all the digital devices that you're talking about around you. So before you had, let's say, a company of 100 people, there were 100 devices that at peak they had 20 people using it. Now there's going to be at peak 100 people using it. You're going to have your IoT devices. You're going to have your security system. You're going to have all sorts of application around that they have to work all the time. So now enterprises need to come up with that private networking. Before, Wi-Fi was the solution, but Wi-Fi first is not secure. Second, it doesn't have the best mobility use case. So which it means when you're on the go, if you get your phone and start running and go
Hmm.
from one Wi-Fi access point to the other one, you have a disconnection. But you
Right.
could be on your cellular phone and be driving 60 miles per hour and your phone works,
Right.
very well. So if you think about a warehouse that introduce automation and you're going to have these lift trucks that are moving around by themselves, they're going to go to the outside to pick up to the loading zone, coming
They can't
back,
drop.
it can drop. That's one application. The second application is the bandwidth. Once you want a very high bandwidth and very low latency, Wi-Fi usually fails.
Right.
And that's what we need cellular network for.
So if I'm thinking about, like a WeWork, a co-working space where pre-COVID, maybe 10% of the workers are on a video call at any given moment. And now post-COVID in this hybrid world, we've got 80% of people on video calls at any given moment. That's a lot more demand than before. And so the networks need to be upgraded. And it sounds like when you say network, that's not it. You say network as in like that will kind of replace Wi-Fi, or or the new Wi-Fi will be built off of it.
When I talk about network, I talk about any sort of medium for connectivity. And I do believe that one network is not the solution for everything. We're going to have multiple networks at the same time. We're going to have a Wi-Fi for a certain application. We're going to have a cellular for a certain application. And depending on the type of devices, depending on the type of the use case, we built them in a
Yeah.
different way.
Tell me if I'm getting this correctly. Okay. Let's take a shopping center with 5 storefronts. Uh,
Mhm.
each store, let's say they're all on Verizon Fios, and
Mhm.
each store has their own Wi-Fi network. But the reality
Mhm.
is, all 5 Wi-Fi networks are drawing from the same connection source, right? The Verizon line. That singular line is distributed to the 5 stores. So now one of the stores, their network needs are so large that being straight going through Verizon is no longer an option. So now they need to build their own network. Is
No,
that
no,
kind of what you're
well,
saying?
no, no, no.
No.
That's
Okay. I
no,
did not
that's
make
not.
sense of it. So help me make sense of it.
Sure. So the big cable that's coming from basically Verizon or AT&T, doesn't matter if you support Wi-Fi, cellular, everything. That big cable has to come, and that big cable is usually not the bottleneck, because
Okay.
those are big fat fiber optic pipes that they could have
Huge.
tens of
Okay.
gigabytes. Yeah. So the problem is that you have an existing Wi-Fi network, and you need to have a Wi-Fi network for your customers that are coming there. But you have all your payment system, and you want to have make sure that they're always connected. You want to make sure they're always secure. So it makes more sense to have a cellular connection for those, or as a backup, you have both systems together. In the use case you were talking about, that's one of the reasons that you want to have. But let's think about a hospital. You have a hospital, and you have your public network that the people who come there who want to be connected to it. You have your financial system that should be connected to it. Where you have your medical devices that are connected to it. In the near future, you might have this remote precision medical devices that are very secure. And you don't want to connect everything to one network,
Right.
because it's going to stop working. So you need multiple networks segmented in different ways so everyone could do it. This use case, for example, for the hospital did not exist 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So before, if an enterprise wanted to build a network, they were just building Wi-Fi. They put an access point everywhere. Everything was working. Everyone were happy. But now it has become very complex, that what devices should be in Wi-Fi, what devices should be in cellular, where do I want a connectivity of cellular, Wi-Fi, how many access points, what's the point of cost? And one thing very interesting about networks is networks are alive. When you build the infrastructure for building, some of them has been up for past 2,000 years, and they're still up and running. But networks, every year, 2, 3 years, you need to upgrade them. So it's not that you do it and it's over. That's where the complexity is even more.
You need
That's
to
I have
upgrade the wiring. Is that correct? The
You need
wiring and
to
the
add more
hardware.
access point. You need to upgrade the technology that you use. You need to upgrade the backbone fiber optic that's coming there. So there's always more and more usage, more applications that are coming there that requires more bandwidth. So imagine every new iPhone that comes, the quality of that video that you see there is better than the previous one. That means you need more bandwidth. And let's say people do more FaceTime together, so more bandwidth needed, and you need an upgrade on the network.
This constant upgrading explains why I have so many wires in my backyard that go to nothing. Literally, like a couple of years ago, I tracked all the wires going towards my house, and I went to find their endpoints, and some of them were just outside cut off. And so like
Yeah.
there's so many wires because we keep upgrading, but no one is coming to clean the old ones
No,
up.
there's this rule that says in software engineering, in any sort of engineering, when you see something sitting somewhere, first find who did it, ask them why they did it, then they remove it. And usually nobody knows who did it and why they did it, so the better is to stay. Otherwise, you cut it and something stops working, and you never know what happened. you know?
Well, for some of mine, the edges were already cut. They were just hanging outside a corner of my house, and I was like, okay, well, we can like cut it, trim it out. All right, let's get back on track here. So you wrote an article last month on eino's blog about streamlining enterprise connectivity from the everyday worker's perspective. I think you've already given us examples. It seems like from the worker's perspective, they're just getting seamless connectivity, maybe aside from moving from one end of the floor to another end and having to switch Wi-Fi's. But what's going on underneath the hood that maybe we're
Uh,
not seeing?
yeah, so what's happening for enterprises now is that uh, the possibility of having a private cellular network did not exist previously, because there was no free spectrum that everyone could use. Now we have that. And now, as a IT leader in any sort of enterprise, the question comes to, do I need a cellular network or no? And if I do I need to still keep my Wi-Fi? Yes or no? Or if I need both, what's the dimension I need to have? And those are very hard questions to be answered when you're at scale, when you have hundreds of buildings, when you have hundreds of warehouses or manufacturing facilities or universities. And what we're trying to basically help enterprises out is giving you a tool that they could create this digital twin of their environment, run different use cases, and tell them that this is your current scenario. Now do a few clicks and imagine you have 5G, how your network's going to perform with your user experience, how much future proof it is. Do you need to upgrade your network a year from now, 3 years from now? And help them to make that decision with better information and much more clear for them.
So by creating this digital twin, this copy of their existing network, you can then take away some of the complexity that maybe they're facing by visually showing them and simulating different improvements and approaches. And since you said, and I just am learning this, that the networks have to be upgraded on a fairly regular, like sounds like 2 to 3 year basis, you can say, what's your budget? These are the improvements. If you can spend a little more, we can push off the next improvement for 3 or 4 years instead of 2 or 3, something like that.
Correct. And there's also more than that. For example, you were talking about having digital devices at home. The same thing exists in companies. Imagine you want to introduce a new set of sensors to help you with air quality, to help you with movement of people, and you need to add 100 more sensors to your building. How's that going to be on your current network? Is it going to work? Do you need to add more? Or if you are a manufacturing facility, you want to introduce new IoT devices, and there's thousands of them. Do I need to upgrade my network? Yes, no. If yes, how do I need to upgrade my network? And I'm planning in 3 years from now, my roadmap is to add more digital experiences. How about
Mm-hmm.
that? So all of those decisions could be done on the platform with just a few clicks.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. What companies or what types of companies? You don't have to tell me which companies, but if someone's listening and they're like, "Oh, my uncle works at X," they should know about this. Like, what's the uncle's job, and what are they doing that they should know? Like, who are you targeting with,
Sure. We have our current segment that we're looking for and we are working with are companies that they build and manage wireless networks. They're called system integrators, managed network service providers. And these are the companies that when any enterprise wants to build a network, they go to them and our tool helps them make that decision. But we're also directly working with the IT departments of big enterprises, about 5,000 people, and they do own many buildings, many physical infrastructure with an existing network, and help their IT management team to make the
know?
decisions or make informed decisions with our tool.
Got it. Okay. All right. What kinds of, if they're working at a large university or in the IT department of a company that has a lot of buildings and a lot of people, I guess what would their job or job title sound like?
Basically, director of IT, head of IT, anyone who's related to IT infrastructure and network infrastructure of the company.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, everyone listening to Make Sense is going to keep their ear to
Mhm.
the ground for you. So this was super, super interesting. Let's go into our third and final segment. Who needs a safety net? I love this with entrepreneurs. We put risk a lot every day. So in this segment, I ask my guests to share the risks, the failures, nay, the learning lessons of entrepreneurship and creating their own path into the future. Payman, I asked you to come up with a good story. So why don't you share?
Yeah, certainly. one thing that's super interesting for me, or as I entered this journey and I learned it step by step, was that when you start a company, you start with an idea, and you think you have some good idea, and you go to the market, try to validate it. That's exactly the type of service that you help everyone with, and come up with some sort of MVP, and you try it out there, and you go through iterations and iterations and iterations to find it. Hopefully, at some point, or don't you stop, or you pivot, or you completely change. And one thing I personally find out when I entered this journey was that whenever, at each moment as an entrepreneur, you're on the path, and you're gonna hit a wall, and that happens all the time. And once you hit the wall, at the early days of entrepreneurship, it sometimes takes you months to even realize you have hit the wall. You see that you're working very hard, you're working all the time, and you do whatever you can, and nothing's really happening. And it takes you even time to realize if it is happening or not happening because there's not much there. There are not much metrics there.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and then at some point you realize, oh, I've hit the wall. It's been like 2 months, and you realize. And then the next step after you realize that you have hit the wall is, okay, what's the next direction and where to go? And this process always happens in the entrepreneurial world. And when someone's is a more experienced entrepreneur, uh, the first is they understand they have hit the wall right away or much faster, or even one step before that, they could predict, oh, this path is going to hit the wall, so let me shift and let me go towards another direction to save my energy, to save my time. And this is a very interesting concept in kind of good life lesson because it's kind of the same thing in our personal life as we live.
Mm-hmm.
That we, uh, as human beings, we realize there are things that we like, there are directions that want to go, why we do them, how we do them, and we have all these ideas in our head that pick a direction in life, and we go towards that. And after some point, we realize that, oh, this was not the right decision for me,
Yeah.
And I'm sure it happens. I mean,
I,
hundreds
I
of times.
always I say that I've been self-employed for a decade, and it's mostly been an exploration of things I don't want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
It's mostly
uh,
been that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's in your personal growth as well. Like as a person, you always want to feel well. You want to be in a good mental health state, physical health state, and you need to find what your body responds to, what your mind responds to, and
100%.
uh, and that's a learning curve because sometimes you feel like, oh, this is the right act for me, and then you realize, no, it is not.
Yeah, right. I think one of the things I thought you might say, but I think you might have said, but I think you will agree with me, is that every time you come up to the moment where you're like, what I'm doing is not
Mhm,
working, there's a level of like fear and
mhm,
anxiety and some regret
mhm,
and sense of failure that you have to process through. And I think as an experienced entrepreneur, you process through it a lot faster than as a younger entrepreneur.
yeah,
It can sideline you because it takes a few times to really own that failures are learning lessons, not destructive indicators of your poor character and miserly future, like. And so I thought that was like one thing you were going to go towards, is like, yeah, like they're they shake you up a little, like, or the time that they shake you up. I think there's always going to be like oh shit, I worked on
mhm,
this for a little too long, why didn't I see the red flags, why didn't I see it? And then you're like, on to the next. And we want that
yeah.
time to be as short as possible. And that just comes with experience and understanding that really the road to success is this saying, like, a road to success is a series of failures, you know,
Mhm.
something like that. I have
Yeah,
this
yeah.
other quote that I saw on Reddit, subreddit Get Motivated, where it's basically saying boring progress makes for exceptional results, right? We work for so long and we don't necessarily see the progress until one day it manifests as something a lot bigger than we could have ever imagined in front of us. So, what would you say is your time to recover now when you realize
Uh,
you've made a mistake?
when you were talking about that, actually something came to my mind, some memories there, and there are a couple of things that really helps. When you start your entrepreneurial journey, it's very hard to identify yourself beyond what you do. Basically, what you do is who you are, and that's a very dangerous state of being to be. So what I learned through time is I exist as a human being. Who I am, my values, my worth is not really related to what I do. Even if I become the most successful entrepreneur, or if I fail everything for the rest of my life, my value as a human being stays the same. And that really helps. This association of you and what you do makes it much easier, because then you become this more of an observer of the things that happens around your life, and you try to make the right decision. You're not emotional about it. And talking about the recovery, I to answer a little bit differently. The very first time I pitched the company to an investor, and some investors are very harsh to respond. He was so harsh. He told me like, "This idea will never work. This is awful. You're wasting your time and everything." And I was down for a week, after he told me that. And now when I get a rejection from an investor, it's usually 5 seconds. And I go on to
Yeah,
the next one. So it's something you learn that there are people that have ideas and don't take anything personally. They say something and get it in and just move on and go for the next thing.
100%. I always, when I am coaching startup founders, and you may have heard me say this, maybe not, but when processing feedback, if one person says it, it's an opinion. If two people say it, it's a coincidence. And if three people say it, it's a theme that you can act on. So while when one person can say something and it can sting, one way to speed up your recovery from that sting is to just say, that's just one person,
Yeah.
right? That's just one person. And so I love that example, right? Because I similarly, some people poo poo on an idea and it makes me question my entire existence, or younger Lindsay, but
Yeah.
now it's like, well, that's just one person, and if they're not my target customer, my target investor, or whatever, like I can just put that aside. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I really appreciate that learning lesson. I also really appreciate having you. Let's make sense of the future of internet connectivity and network availability. Here's some things I learned from you, Payman. All right. One, networks need constant upgrades and maintenance. And that's why there's so many wires in my backyard. We're going to see more and more, cellular networks. Cellular networks, while more expensive, are safer than Wi-Fi. And for the everyday human being that knows how to work your router, you are responsible for the security of your home Wi-Fi. So take some time, maybe change the password or review that you know how to connect to it, etc. Make sure that you are taking care of your personal data security in your home. Did I get all of that right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
and
generally.
yeah, certainly. And then the one thing that one starting trend I've seen is that there are more managed services for home users that are coming. That when you enter a new big building, it comes with Wi-Fi, so you're not responsible like before that you had to call Verizon, get your router installed and everything.
Right, right.
So it is improving, but still, if you put your router somewhere that someone could just pick it up, then they have access to everything.
Yeah, right. If they know how to hack in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you all for listening to Make Sense with me, your host, Lindsay Tabis, and guest, Payman Samadi. We hope you enjoyed our take on networks and connectivity. Payman, where can people find you online?
So our company's website is eino.ai, eino.ai, and they can contact us from there. And yeah, just send me a
Awesome.
message.
Awesome. And you've got a blog with some really interesting articles going on, and we will all pay attention to our uncle the next time he starts talking about IT network stuff because he might be someone can help. So, final note, if you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits. On YouTube, smash that subscribe for next week's episode. And for audio only, follow wherever you get your podcast. Thank you, Payman, for joining me.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good seeing you.